did all this when we had to go through OBS. Except I had to do a camera and audio.
Very
and
nice.
Get rid of an echo. It was bullshit.
Do we have a name for our podcast?
That's something we're going to develop today.
All right. We're going to develop that on air. I'm Uncle Bugatti.
I'm Tactabeard.
I'm just the asshole that's going to be the record keeper for this podcast because we don't have the headphones or microphone set up, and we're just kind of winging it, which is fine. But I'm MPK, and if you want to see how ugly we are, you can go to the MPK14 YouTube channel and figure that out for yourself.
And my first intro was long. Fuck you. All right, so we're here, and nobody's
And he's
queer. God damn it! Listen, look, I think we've established I'm the zinger guy. All right, all right. No. We can share. We can share all that together.
I'd say we better share the limelight, otherwise it's going to come to blows, and I don't think you want that to happen.
We also are surrounded by firearms, so I'm not threatening you, but I'm saying I don't have a chance in a fist fight with you. I'm gonna use a firearm. I'm being honest. You want honesty, that's what you get. But so, do we have a topic? I'm gonna throw some things out there.
What is our topic, MPK?
All right, so one of the few times I'm actually going to be on the microphone, other than being the research guy, the basics for us today are obviously develop a name. Maybe tell people a little bit about ourselves. I mean, we're all engineers here. We all know who we are. The listeners don't necessarily know who we are. And then some of the other topics that we can talk about, all the wonderful crap that you see in the media these days. I mean, that's always countless. We always bring that up in just daily conversation. The other things I've got is firearms training. I know Uncle Bugatti's done a lot of interesting stuff that we haven't caught up on yet. Social topics like toxic masculinity, feminism is always a really good one. Or we can go further into ourselves and talk about college a little bit.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, I don't want to bring up too much of college. Hey, I got the degree. All right, that's all you guys need to know.
I have 2, technically.
Yeah, I mean, if you count an associate's, I have 2, but
No, my alma mater fucked up.
oh, really?
Yeah, no, they messed up and sent one for the semester or the year after. So I have 2 degrees with my name on them, or 2 diplomas.
What is your is a bachelor's in science? Is
Yeah,
it?
bachelor's in science of mechanical with mechanical engineering with a concentration in biomedical.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
So
I
that
know
is a BS MEBM.
all the acronyms. We're like the fucking army over here. It's like we can't remember all those words. Just make an acronym out of it. That's fine. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna dive into some kind of topic. What we want? Firearms. Everyone loves firearms. Everybody loves.
We all do firearms.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? Let's go on a subject. Let's see how super Marxist ideas have kind of infiltrated their way into our workplace. Let's start with that one because I've definitely seen some odd things working for more of a liberal company based out of the People's Republic of California and also Germany. So I don't know. Have you have any specific? Do you have any specific instances of training or anything like that where you've just seen overt Marxism in any form?
I work at a testing facility for diesel engines. You tell me. You think I've seen any overt Marxist bullcrap?
Well, okay.
Let me give you a hint. I'll give you an answer. No. So, that being said, at other jobs I've worked, it all depends on what you mean by overtly Marxist. We'll go ahead and go with your experiences first, since you've worked at far, far more liberal companies than I have.
Oh yeah. So I haven't seen anything as far as like misgendering people as bad, but like every single one of our online trainings is involved with like they always have all of the quotas filled. There's a black guy, there's a chick, there's a gay dude, and they all have a Spanish guy. That's all covered. And we're inclusive. And it's all these bumper sticker phrases that people fucking use, and I hate it. It's like, why is the left always broken down into bumper sticker phrases? Is that all they can remember? Like, save the planet! Save the planet!
See, I think the fundamental issue is that it's very hard to divide people up into individuals. To relate it back to mathematics and engineering, you're taking a differential equation of a significant magnitude and trying to break it down into a simple mechanical system. So if you're saying the movement of a leg, we'll say the differential equation for the differential movement of each muscle fiber is just astoundingly large. And it would take you years to calculate by hand. But you could just break it down to, okay, I have a calf muscle, I have a thigh muscle, I have a hamstring. Those are the main ones that you're going to worry about. So let's just do, you have 3 movements. So there you have 3 equations or 3 variables.
Well, they're summarizing an idea, but I think the thing that I always see is that they can't expand on it. So you see a bumper sticker that says, from my cold, dead hands. Obviously, Charleston Heston famous phrase. If you say, oh, what's that mean? It's like, yeah, I mean it. From my fucking cold, dead hands. Like, and I can back up whether I'm quoting literally the Second Amendment or whether it's the Federalist Papers or any of that kind of significant related to my rights as a person. When you say to somebody, oh, healthcare should be free, right?
Why?
Yeah. You say, why? Oh, because people are suffering. Well, I don't consider it a human right because you're forcing someone else to give you service, like a doctor, right? That's not a right; it's a service. Okay, you don't have the human right to have cheeseburgers on a Friday night.
What is this not America?
I mean, depending on who you ask, but every fat fuck in America will tell you differently. But hey, I mean, look, I'm fat. Well, I mean, you guys can't see me; I'm buff as shit. But I will say, McDonald's has definitely contributed to this big old gut of mine, and red, white, and blue gut with all of its beautiful stretch marks. But regardless, I'm
beautiful in any size.
But I see tons and tons of people being beautiful at every size. Okay, all right.
Yeah, talk about bumper sticker.
Right, fucking idiots. Like, all right, do you really believe that? Or are you just trying to say it enough so I'll believe it? Because I'm not going to fuck you, you fucking land whale.
See, I think the fundamental issue is they don't believe the bullshit that they're selling, and that's why they try to sell it to other people. It's like if you say a lie enough, eventually it becomes a truth. Because you've convinced yourself, you convinced everyone else. At what point do you tell a lie enough that it becomes a truth?
And, I mean, I completely agree with that. And if everyone around you is saying the exact same thing and someone comes in with a different viewpoint and you're like, no, that's wrong. Everyone else can't be wrong. That's like people playing 3-card Monte. You go up and I heard someone say this one time. They were out playing and they saw 3-card Monte, and so they're watching and they're like, man, I guessed the right cup every time. I could win some money. And they're like, okay, they go and they put money down, and by the time they lose it, they realized everyone in that crowd was in on it. Right? I mean, the very far left controls about 75% of the media, 75% of anything you'd hear if you put on just standardized media. Like, oh, I'm Joe fucking bum nobody from USA.
Well, Joe fucking bum nobody doesn't listen to CNN, MSNBC. They listen to Fox.
That's true. I mean, and is it just a big case of confirmation bias?
That is exactly what it is. And everyone is guilty of it. Everyone can fall to it. It is not difficult to fall for confirmation bias. Just because you like the way something sounds or don't like the way something sounds does not necessarily mean that it's true.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah.
Or false.
That's very true. I like to think of everything as just like a theory in any kind of scientific field. Like, this is the best information that we've found so far.
So the most interesting thing that I've been reading about and talking about with people at work, especially since I work in it's a manufacturing facility for aerospace components that we've made a lot of it autonomous. We've deleted a lot of operations technicians' jobs, and something that I've been wanting to bring to you guys and see what you had to think about was, with the future of automation, what do you guys think about universal basic income and how Marxist lefties try and spin that to be basically the moral right that everyone should just automatically get because they deserve it, instead of being a competitive, slightly right alpha male.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
No, it's good.
It just caught up. Okay.
Because that's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is I agree that we should be able to help one another out, but I think that should be at a community level, not just throwing money at a problem like the government has been trying to do for the last century.
Absolutely. You want to start on that, Beard?
So the thought of universal basic income is great in theory. I don't think it works so well in practice simply because at what point do people have an incentive to do anything if they're guaranteed living? Hell, well, I'm guessing you wouldn't strive, but you would certainly live. So if you could just sit around in your room and knock your testicles around and play video games all day, wouldn't you do it?
Me personally, I'd say no, but I think that it appeals to a lot of people that, I think there's a strong lack of a purpose in life.
Ask me at 18 and I'd have told you, fuck yeah, I would. I'd have sat around in my room and knocked my testicles around and played video games all fucking day.
Yeah, and it's an easy way out. That's the way I think about it. I think I heard Ben Shapiro talking about this specifically, and what he said was that a universal basic income (UBI) from now on is they said if it is a supplement to every other form of welfare, then I could maybe be on board with the idea. Because, I mean, how many avenues of fucking welfare do we have, or some kind of government handout in any way to tons of people? If we could strip that and go for, because look, I think we're all fairly libertarian here about anything the government puts its hands on kind of sucks, right? And
yes, can confirm.
Yeah. Maybe not.
Just trying to think of one thing that the government's done really well without creating a whole lot of waste. I would have to say indoor plumbing, and that was probably it.
Yeah.
That's where it started, and that's where it ended.
And you can attribute a lot more lives saved to plumbers than doctors, right? It's just sanitation. Like think about the luxuries we have in life. But I think if I would be willing to, I am willing to compromise, right? If you give me, I'm willing to compromise. I think most people, if you sit them down one-on-one, like, okay, I'm willing to compromise X, Y, Z. I think there's a lot of sensationalism, but if we sat down on the table and said, look, we're going to get rid of everything, food stamps, housing, Medicaid, Medicare, get rid of all of that and take it down to just a universal basic income, because I don't think it's realistic just to strip it all away. I'd love to, because I mean, I don't truly believe that we have an overpopulation problem. I think that there's just a ton of people doing jack shit with their time.
I'm going to say that I say no to universal basic income simply for the fact that without a direct purpose in mind or without a direction in your life, it makes your life hell. That is literally living in hell. If I didn't have direction in my life and I just sat around in my boxer shorts, knocked my testicles around playing video games all day, I would live a very unfulfilled life.
Yeah. And I mean
it only gets you so far.
This podcast is going to spiral down to the real roots of society's problems. That's a problem. What do we even start with? Feminism? No, it wasn't that. But
you got to talk about which wave of feminism.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, look, should women be in the workplace and vote? Yeah, I don't give a shit. Go for it.
If you don't want to, that's your prerogative.
Exactly. And that's, I think, where the line should stop, because there's a lot of statistics thrown around where it makes women look like the oppressed. And I honestly think for a majority of women, especially in America, that they are not an oppressed class, if not even more so than some of these males that I know that are fucking have nowhere to go.
So where are we going with this, gentlemen? What are we capping off this universal basic income thing? Because I mean, we're all engineers. We all want the source code. What's the root cause, and how do we fix it?
So I think technology is going to be the biggest thing here. In the words of the great Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, we need to invent things that aren't invented yet. And technology has always driven progress. It opens new doors as it shuts old ones. I think that can be said for a lot of things. But we're going to have to adapt, and we're going to really have to I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, honestly, and I don't know. Like, I don't like the idea because I'm straight against anything government involved. But there's going to come a point when, like Beard had said, like, you have nothing to do in life. You have no purpose. If you take a bunch of people's jobs all at once, that's not good. That's asking for some sort of weird Marxist revolution against the machines, which in theory should be making our lives better.
So what it's going to come down to is there will eventually be a point when machines are smart enough to be able to, I guess let me start over. At current, machines cannot eliminate all jobs because machines can just give you a number. They cannot interpret that number. They cannot tell you if this is the right number. They just give you a number. So it's a very big stretch to go from giving you a number to interpreting the answer, as we all know from being in engineering.
Absolutely. I mean, human beings are one of the most incredibly adaptive creatures, sources of intelligence that, I mean, we can observe, because there's a lot of things that are very intricate but aren't as adaptable or as understanding as having a conscience.
So a lot of these things tie together with each other, and I think it's very interesting to be able to actually talk about this stuff and take the time to talk about this stuff, because whether it's something good, something bad, you had a divorce, you gave birth to a child, I mean, talking about it is going to get you leaps and bounds ahead of just yelling at someone about it like we see so much on the media. And a lot of these conversations just don't happen. But I'm going to hit you guys with a statistic that I started researching this week. Again, all three of us are in a STEM field. All three of us are, well, we take pride in knowing numbers and logic and reason. But there's a statistic that I read this week, and I'm starting to do some research while you guys are talking back and forth right now. There's only 8% of the United States has a STEM degree. Only 8%. So the technicians that work on this stuff, the engineers that design them, and all the people that are staffed as a support team, 8% of Americans have a STEM degree, and a lot of them are nurses. That's a majority of them are nurses and engineers.
So then a quick question to clarify, what defines a STEM degree? Are we talking CNAs, RNs, nurse practitioners, PhDs of all sort in a science or medical field? What qualifies that? Let's start with the base premise there.
So right now I don't have that in front of me. I will research it as you guys go back and forth. But from what I understand, science, technology, engineering, mathematics would have to do with anything that even closely ties to that, from an associate's degree to a PhD. But I'll research that while you guys go back and forth. But that was a shocking statistic to me, considering technology and its exponential growth in the last 20 years. And no one seems to want to be buying into it via a degree.
There's something called Price's Law, where the square root of all your employees in a company do half the work. I think this is a good example. And the more employees you have, the smaller that number gets. So it's percentage-wise of everything, because obviously it's how math works. So, like, you have 10 employees, 3 of them are doing 50% of the work. You have 10,000 employees, 100 of them. 100 of them are doing half the work. 100 of them are doing half the work of 10,000 people. That's an incredible, and that is just a natural occurrence across any measurable hierarchy, and that, like, that to me, that makes sense. That almost seems high, because now STEM is very important, but we are also the spearhead driving forward innovation. Not necessarily us specifically, but people in STEM, people researching things, people doing jobs that aren't exactly. I would say that they're fairly rewarding as far as purpose, XYZ, but 8%. That's pretty incredible. I feel like I know a lot more engineers, but that's just confirmation bias.
That's simply the situation that you're placed into. That's your environment. You know, far more engineers and technicians, mechanics, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think our school system doesn't help. We treat young boys as if their rambunctiousness is bad, and that's just, it's just biology. Like, you got to get them moving, and you try and put them in a stationary position, and then they don't like school because it's not responsive to anything that they're in tune to learn with. So you teach people wrong, and then they end up with no skill and no drive to learn any skill. I was terrible at studying in college. Terrible. That's a crazy important skill. You want to be good at college, you have to learn how to study. You don't need to learn what they're giving you. You
need to learn how to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And
that is what engineering school does. It teaches you how to learn, because anything you learn in engineering school is not going to translate. I think I've used a percentage or two of things I've learned in engineering school in the jobs that I have had so far.
Except for problem solving. That's the thing that you come out of it with. It's like, look, you got a bunch of stuff to do, and you got timelines, and you got to get it done. That's the biggest thing you learn from it, and it's difficult stuff mentally and sometimes physically, because you're exhausted. I remember being in college. I did not handle college very well, but that's, it is
that's
what it is.
That's all about the attitude that you approach college with, in my eyes.
Absolutely.
Not everyone can handle it, honestly. Think of how many people you started out engineering with when you went to your first school. How many people dropped in the first semester?
Exactly. And that's why I do strongly advocate community colleges, because I think that they care a little bit more about those weed out years, because they only have you for like 2 years. If they get you into a good college, they did their job. Versus if you go to a 4-year degree right away, they don't care about your first. Like, oh, you don't make it through the first 2 years, then you're not worth the last 2.
Yeah, if you don't make it through the first 2 years, you can just go to business school. You'll be fine.
But
that's what we call business majors, as failed engineers.
Civil engineers.
We're not going to start that.
Sorry. Anyway.
Even though they're window lickers.
God damn it.
But we're not going to start that.
No, we won't get into that one. I get too much flack for that. But anyway, but I had a welding instructor, actually, and he told me he was a welder for the Boilermakers for like 20 years, and then he went and got his manufacturing master's, and he's teaching at a community college. But regardless, very intelligent dude. Why the hell are we learning calculus? Why is calculus so emphasized? Why is basic physics so emphasized? When is the last time you haven't had something already computed for you? You should be in college if you're in college for 4 years, whatever. They want to take your money, that's fine. I think it should be 2 years of exclusively designed projects, overviewed by people that are in the field, telling you what you're doing right and wrong, and producing actual results for real problems, instead of this weird, like, oh, your last semester you're gonna like kind of dick around and make some kind of idea together. That, like, it's the school system to me. It's very, very screwed up.
Oh, absolutely. I've been in 2 actual engineering environments. One as a quality engineer, which you absolutely will never use calculus, and you'll use statistics, and you'll memorize the bell curve and how it works for a lot of cost, poor quality, parts per million stuff. And then right now I'm working as a tool designer / manufacturing engineer, and you just need to know how Creo works, and you need to know how to 3D print, which you will never learn in college. I actually was thankful enough to teach a 3D parametric modeling class that I brought 3D printing to, because obviously that's part of the future. Rapid prototyping is huge. But mainly I want to hit you guys with some numbers I just found. USA News which didn't have a reference, unfortunately, because it's a .com. It is not an organization by any means. 40% of bachelor's degrees in STEM are earned by men. 29% are women. And these are of all, basically they pooled all bachelor's degrees of men and women, and they said 40% of them being earned by men are in STEM. 29% of all bachelor's degrees for women are STEM. And then at the PhD level, 58% of all PhDs for men were in STEM, and then 33% of all women PhD level are STEM. And then the National Science Foundation, which is actually an organization, so they do their own data collection. In 2013, 1% of all men and women earned a bachelor's degree in the United States in science and engineering specifically. So even smaller than the 8% that I found last week. 1% in 2013, men and women combined in the United States got a STEM degree as a bachelor's degree. 1%.
That's sad.
So then, quick follow-up question. Is that 1% earned that year or 1% had that year?
That is had.
That's astounding.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, college degrees aren't everything, and I will hold to that for the rest of my life, because I know plenty of people that are well-adjusted without college degrees and don't need them.
And I know a lot of people that have pretty high college degrees and are just completely blind to everything except what is right in front of them, fed to them on an almost daily basis. So, and you know what? Some of those people, it's like software coders. There's a very, very certain mindset you got to have to sit down and code all day, and those people need to be given whatever they want, because I don't want to do it.
We'll have to have my dad on the podcast sometime, because he's been a computer programmer for 25 years.
Yeah,
plus.
That's incredible. Watching that development, that'd be wow. That's like my grandpa worked at a certain facility around the area back in the 70s and was literally pulling bugs out of cards in their giant computer machine room. Like, they were literally debugging. They'd put note cards in, and it would spit out the next day. It'd spit out an answer, and that's more like along development along the way. But honestly, going back to degrees and stuff, I feel like my degree was pretty much worthless, and I got a mechanical engineering degree.
Quick aside, you do know that's why they literally call it debugging.
Yeah, that's like I was pretty shocked when I went. I was like, "What do you mean pulling bugs out?" And I talked to my grandpa. He's like, "There's these damn note cards, and the bugs would get in there and short the whole machine." It's like, oh my god, I get upset when something lags loading on Google.
But to have to pick out fucking insects.
Yeah, that's some diagnostics right there, because you're going through, you know,
Is it a fly or a tick? It was a caterpillar.
Well, there you go. I mean, but going back to kind of circling back to automation, my grandpa could walk into CAT and with a tie on, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're management material. We're going to keep you here for 30 years. Good job." And that is gone. I mean, it's so funny that the leftists of yesteryear were upset. They're like, "Oh, I got to go and get a job and work for 30 years."
That's the leftist of today. I got to work 40 hours. And I'm like, wait, you only want me to work 40 hours? Shit. I'll take it.
Well, different aspects. But like now it's like, oh, we want, like, oh, I have to go find a job that has XYZ. I mean, most of the, I'd say at least half the insurance given out in this country is through your employer, right? There's a lot of things that go into that, and that's where this comes back into kind of universal basic income, because a lot of people. I mean, my company has great benefit packages, and I'm sure a lot of companies. I mean, that's a good selling point for.
What it comes down to is if you get someone with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering or engineering of any sort, they're not going to work somewhere without benefits, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean that's just completely. I would be shocked if they'd. I mean, if you're a contractor, that's one thing. If you're like, oh, you're going to be on for 6 months, we're going to hire you on maybe That's fair. I mean, but that's all consensual. That's the other thing that this comes into is we're talking universal basic income coming from someone who believes that taxation is extortion. Like, it's hard for me to say that that's a willing consensual agreement. I mean, that's the moral qualms I have with this.
See, it'd be a willing consensual agreement if things work like they should, but they don't. Look at the roads in California, Illinois, any place like that. The roads are trash. And you pay taxes every year with the assumption that, hey, we're going to fix the roads. I guarantee you it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and not to mention, and we could dive way into this, but like prevailing wages. We're paying people. We're not incentivizing them to get it done faster. We're like, oh, we're going to pay you what a normal private company would be charging.
But we don't have time constraints.
We don't have any time constraints. And so you think that they're going to get it done as fast as possible if you're paying them, especially hourly? Fuck no. Like,
if you're paying hourly, you're going to take the amount of time it requires for you to get the job done and get the money that you want.
How many people you know? Like, I know a couple people that were in the military, and they're, they get a GI Bill, and they're like, oh, I could go get a job, but I'm just going to keep staying in school because I'm getting this GI Bill. Now, granted, they earned that.
It only goes for so long, too.
It only goes for so long, A. B, I think that they earned that. But that's a perfect example. You could go out, make good money doing a 40-hour-a-week job, but it's like, no, I'd rather just kind of just take what I can. And, I think anyone in any specific situation is going to pry out every little resource they can from what is given to them. So you give them Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, housing, and you give them a universal basic income. What, you're going to incentivize them to go out and get a job? Like, everything is provided.
No, because what you're going to do is you're going to end up working 40 hours a week at a dead-end shitty job only to take absolutely bupkis home. Nothing at all. Because your job is not deemed to pay well enough. You are not deemed to be worthy of more than the basics. That is where the problem lies with universal basic income in my eyes.
Yeah. I mean, the number one cause of house fires in the USSR was poorly made televisions because there's no incentive to make a good one. They just explode. I mean, this is back when that could do that, but
a lot of people would say that the way to fix that is the government should step in and say, hey, manufacturer, you can't make crap that cheap anymore, which in the end, USSR, everything was owned by the government anyway, so why wouldn't they already make them safe? Oh, because they don't have any incentive to do it. And then you just follow that logic loop round and around and around until you go to the bottom of the shit bowl. And that's where you end up.
Yeah.
That's where socialism leads you.
So I guess to wrap this one up, what do we do about it? What's the fix? What's the root cause and how do we fix it?
Let me just wrap this up in one sentence here. I don't fucking know. That's a really like this is probably to me, global warming's gonna come kill everybody. Look, this is the problem of our generation. I also don't believe in generations, but this is the problem of our time. Like
global warming or universal basic income.
Fuck you.
You got to be specific.
No,
we're talking about multiple topics all at once.
Universal basic, well, not necessarily universal basic income, specifically automation. Like the employee-employer relationship that allows people to advance their. I mean, we are the wealthiest nation in the world. We live in the highest standard of living in America than anyone in all of human history. I mean, me as someone making, not a crazy amount, but an okay amount in America, I live better than any king 100 years ago past ever will in their entire lives. I have AC. I can buy anything I want, have it shipped to my door in fucking 2 days. 2 days. Anything I want. Like, there's benefits that come with this, but there's a relationship, and I get that because of my relationship with the employer. Now, my job, I don't think could be replaced by machines because I work on machines, and they fucking suck. So, I won't name any names, but we're going to come to a pass where the almost 1,000, 2,000 not eons, but the age of humanity old, is as far back as almost agriculture goes. We're interrupting the fabric of society that held it together because now there's going to be people that say, "Oh, we don't need 50% of the workforce anymore."
But that being said, we also added 50% of the workforce, about 60, 70 years ago.
You talk about women.
Yeah, actually, that's what it comes down to, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying you've seen wage stagnation, you've seen shitty jobs, but you know why that happened, why it now takes a family to pay for a family instead of just a husband working, because women went into the workforce. And like I said, in no way is that a bad thing. If you want to go into the workforce, you go into the workforce. If you don't, you want to stay home, raise the children, stay home, raise the children.
Yeah. And once again, consent being a very important issue here.
I do not consent to universal basic income. Do not take my money.
But I mean, it's a tough call.
I think it's funny that Beard mentioned that most of the jobs we literally just made up within the last 20 years. This was one that I found astonishing. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. We literally have an intelligence agency that I think has like 16,000 employees. Yeah, 16,000 employees. I've never heard of this branch of government. They literally gather intelligence about space. We make up jobs. That's why government jobs are so made fun of, because most of them are literally made up. Nobody knows what they do. No one knows why our tax money goes to it. But we are literally taking up information about space. So I guess the best way I could see to fix this mindset of whether you want to call it a millennial issue, whether you want to call it a leftist issue, I think, especially in the university realm, which a lot of people in the United States do not go to university, but a lot of the problems we're facing today could be fixed by, well, one, simply having a conversation about it and actually using deductive reasoning, which I think most people do not have in their head. Being able to talk about these things without being afraid of someone shutting you down or basically keeping you from speaking, which is what we actually see at university, which is not why universities were made to begin with. They were there to share ideas and grow as a society. I think a lot of this stuff can just be solved by conversation, but there's a point where there's not a lot of action on a conversation. There's a lot of really smart people that can talk forever, i.e. Jordan Peterson. But the impact, you don't see an absolute impact from what they're doing until years later when people take action on what they're saying. But I think it's amazing that even at the conservative-ish university that you and I went to, Mr. Bugatti, the Blues still found their way down there, and they still rioted about how Black Lives Matter, even though it had absolutely nothing to do with the region that we were in. They always find their way into this echo chamber, and I don't understand how it gets there.
You know, that what you were specifically talking about was actually a protest against the rising price of college, and that was the protest. And Black Lives Matter took over that protest to further Black Lives Matter. There was also another racist hoax that happened in that campus where someone, dorms are a weird petri dish of society, and if I never step foot in another dorm my entire life, I will be a better person because of it. But a lot of people have like whiteboards outside their door, and someone wrote something like, "Ooh, something racist."
N-word Jim.
Yeah, and that ended up being a hoax. I don't know if you knew about that.
So I guess, what is the name? We'll sit here and ponder that until
this was
we can figure it
significantly
out.
more civil and educational than I thought it was going to be. The car ride over here was nothing like this.
That is so true, though.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
the car ride over here involved talking about politicians that we would bone and
Old and young.
old and young. Uncle Bugatti needs himself a hot tub and a bottle of whiskey and
Probably
three of the
two.
oldest members of Congress in a hot tub.
excluding Bernie Sanders.
Sorry, oldest female.
Thank you. I don't want anyone to think that I'm some sort of
And one particular Supreme Court justice.
Yes.
Oh,
But
fuck.
I guess if we had to put a date, I don't know. This is definitely like
This was far more civil than I was anticipating.
we
I'm actually happy about that.
as soon as the microphones turned on, everyone was like, "Oh, I'm Walter Mondale, and this is the facts." like what the hell? We've been shooting guns all day in Idaho, and we've just been. I mean, really shooting this shit, and I think honestly we're all a little tired. Every time I come over here, I get exhausted. I don't know what that is.
I think it has to do with the radon that we're currently absorbing.
Brought to you by Inhaling Radon. Inhaling Radon. Make your day a Radon day.
I just thinking of names like I've been wanting to change the mpk 1414 channel because that was literally my Xbox gamer tag, and we couldn't think of something more clever.
Well, we couldn't think of something that we could get. We wanted a Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Yeah, that was already gone.
Or Whiskey Tactical Foxtrot. We couldn't get either.
Yep.
Or Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Because you have to have an acronym so people can throw the acronym out there, or you have to be Joe Rogan.
He has the T and Piers. The T and Piers for Nothing Fancy. Or Forgotten Weapons, as Forgotten Weapons no matter what. Or is it CN? Oh, it's CN Arsenal, yeah.
That it's tough. I mean, that's just some marketing stuff right there. I mean,
Linus Tech Tips, LTT.
and you guys are. I mean, they're specifically talking about their gun channel. We're talking about just naming things in general because everything is already like. There is, there's a lot of accusations of joke theft among stand-up comedians, but it's like there's a logical conclusion. It's like monkeys typing fucking Shakespeare, man. You're going to come up with the same joke. And
1,000 monkeys for 1,000 years typing randomly would eventually write Shakespeare. For those of you who don't know that reference.
Just to be ironic, we could call this the SIU podcast just for Suck It Up.
Suck it up. Suck it up. That is not a terrible fucking idea. I have a ton of merchandise that are already ready to go. Change that old Idaho maroon to some yellow, and we're good to go.
The fact that you know that Idaho is maroon is impressive.
I'll explain things off air, but potatoes are awesome. Buy them.
Purple potato
Specifically, make sure it has that weird Idaho shape on your potato before you eat it.
So is that what we're going to go with? The
Suck
Suck
It
It
Up.
Up podcast?
I haven't heard any other ideas.
No, see, the best things come out of just bullshit and just spontaneous. It's like when people ask me, like, I can come up with some awesome pet names. Like our cat used to be named Luther T. Paxton. He was an attorney. I had a little desk for him. I was going to get him a little briefcase. It was awesome. But that was just out of my ass. And so someone's like, "Oh, can you name this cat for me or something?" And I was like, I got nothing.
Cedric T. Wallace.
Yeah, there you go. Just come up with something stupid. You gotta like give me a couple drinks. Let me get going. I'll give you whatever you want.
So what I'm hearing is it's booze time.
For you guys. All right, well, suck it up, bitches. That's all for this specific podcast. We'll be back live. You don't understand exactly what time frame we're working with because everything's edited. It's wonderful.
Eventually, I would like this to be a live podcast, but we need a lot more practice before that happens.
That's fair. I mean, this is what's great about this is that I can cut this down, cut out all the weird shit, and just get to the meat and maybe get some markers in there. This is good because we can kind of understand. When we get 3 microphones, we get the headphones, everybody's set up a little bit more cleanly, and we can definitely prepare, like literally prepare, because we just came up here like, what are we going to talk about?
I think this is a really good dry run, and the next podcast that we're probably going to record right after this has to be about guns.
Absolutely. My tits are getting hard right now.
Stop. I can only get so erect.
All right, 3, 2, 1, suck it up and suck my